Hello, and welcome back to plantcare.club, where we care about your plants. My name is Fred,
My name is Maddie. We've got our puppy Oliver here.
whether he wants to be or not, he's here. And on this show, we like to do three things. Number one, we talk about your plants, indoor, outdoor, whatever you've got. We'll talk about them as long as they're not fake. Number two, we will do product reviews. So we will, if you're looking for some, today we're talking about grow lights. So if you are looking for grow lights, you're in the market for it, and you say, hey, I'm about to buy this, what do you think? Send us a message and we can take a look at it. And number three, we like to answer your questions. So if you have any questions while you're listening to this, head to plantcare.club and send us a message in the contact us box, or take a look at the blogs. There's lots of other information on there. There's blogs, there's lots of other podcasts and shows, everything else there. So
Yeah.
look around, see if you can find the answer. If not, send us, can help you out.
Yep.
So who are we, Maddie?
Yeah, I'm Maddie. But just before I get into me as well, I just want to let you know you can also check out our YouTube. You can watch this video if you're only listening to this. We've got Spotify, Apple Music, Instagram, lots of places for you to connect with us, lots of places for you to ask your questions. So don't be afraid to reach out to us. We're happy to answer your questions. Yes. Anyways, I am Maddie. Hello, everybody. So if you don't know who I am yet, Fred and I are actually brother and sister, and we grew up on a greenhouse farm. So I've always wanted a part of the greenhouse farm, but I will tell you, without a doubt, I'm no green thumb. I consistently kill plants, which is sad because I grew up on a farm, but I do my best. So I'm here to learn just like you and bring it back to a consumer's view of how does this apply to me? This is really cool information about the greenhouse, but what's this mean about my plant at home? And that's my job here today. So hopefully I'm going to be answering those questions that are coming up in your brain while you're listening to this.
So you can tell who does the marketing because that was much better than how I would have done it. I'm Fred, and I have been with the greenhouse for about 6 years. We grow spring annuals, garden mums, poinsettias, and tropicals. So that would be Kimberleys, Majesties, Mandevilla. We ship these plants across Canada and the United States. So the goal of the show is to take the information that we learn in the greenhouse and then explain to you how you can apply that to the plants at your own home and give you really try to bridge that gap because we've got lots of knowledge in the greenhouse, but sometimes it's a little bit harder to translate that. So what do you need to know? As I mentioned, today we're talking about how are grow lights applied in a greenhouse, and then how can you apply that into your own home? So first off, I want to talk about how they're used. So in general, to start, we want to focus on the plants that are grown in, let's say, Florida or Costa Rica, or some of these, they're native to Costa Rica, let's say. They're native to these really warm climates. Now, if you are listening, I will try to explain this a little bit better. And if you are watching, I'm going to try to move us around here. So on my left, you see three different cities in Canada. Now, I mentioned Canada because that's where we're from, but it applies to basically anywhere in the northern hemisphere. The further north you go, the more drastic this gets. We know that there are places in really northern Canada that have like 24 hours of sunlight and then 24 hours of darkness. So that's like the farthest end of the spectrum. Here you see you've got times where Vancouver,
Yep.
is it Vancouver?
Yep.
It gets about like 2-ish hours of, this is hours of sunlight, and then it goes all the way up to a peak, and then it goes all the way back down to the other end. So Toronto's getting like about 3 hours of really good sunlight in January, and that's not very good. That's not very good compared to, if I drag myself over here, this is Florida. This is somewhere in Florida where they've got 7 hours of sunlight, and that's pretty much all the time because they're so much closer to the equator. So why is this so important? Well, it's because your plants, they want sunlight. They beg for this sunlight. And when they have it, they're able to continue growing, to continue flourishing. They're going to keep moving on. That's when they have 7 hours at least, or 7 hours up to 10 hours plus. When they only get 3, that plant goes, oh my gosh, this is not normal. This is not where I grew up. This is not Costa Rica. It's not Florida. What is going on? They go into shock. That's when we have these problems.
And I'll just add something too. So where we are right now, it's just kind of getting cold in our area, and we had these beautiful, beautiful tropicals. What did Mom have in the front steps?
Alocasia calidora.
Amazing, beautiful, huge, huge alocasias. And recently, when it's been getting really cold, these plants just immediately flopped. Like they hated it. They're not happy anymore. They're done. They're gone. So that's just for reference. It took like 2 nights for this plant to be like, I'm out of here.
Mhm.
This is not my place to be. Not thriving anymore.
Yeah, you tricked me during the summer. In
Yeah.
the summer, I thought maybe we were in the right place, and now we're not in the right place.
We're not in Florida. No.
So there's a reason that the way that grow lights are now used is to trick the plant into thinking that it might be in one of these better climates. So growers will use them in greenhouses, especially when these light levels are a lot lower. Now, when I'm saying growers, please keep in mind that this varies. And if you have a greenhouse out there, and you might be shaking your head and thinking like, "What are you saying? This doesn't make any sense. This is not what I do." There are so many different ways that different greenhouses use these grow lights. So, for example, I'm trying to illustrate a couple of different ideas here. You can see two different pictures on the screen if you are listening. One of them is these lights that are above the plants, and they look pink. They look completely pink because that's actually the spectrum that they're giving to the plants underneath of it in this greenhouse.
However,
Yep.
just a fun fact, aren't the lights actually red and blue?
Yes, there's a mix of red and blue. Now, if you are very interested in this and you really want us to go in depth, we can get an expert on to talk more about the light spectrums and exactly how it goes. But, red and blue is basically where I'm going to say, yep, that's where we're looking. So there are some crops that will use these lights all year round. So there are a lot of vegetables that will do that. Certain types of, if you are trying to grow a crop that needs to be ready at certain times of the year, like let's say cyclamen are very common for that, or some kind of roses, potted roses, they might want, or cut flowers. Cut flowers have to be ready at January, February, March, April. They have to be ready at all times of the year. So if you're trying to grow those, you need to use grow lights to trick the plant into thinking, even in October, oh, don't worry, keep growing because it's May. We're going into the spring. That's what the lights are for. They're there to trick them.
Yeah, and for example, we have grow lights at our greenhouse, and we're using them for cuttings, just for reference. So we use them for cuttings, and Fred, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is my little bit of knowledge I know about these, but it's to actually get it to start to root as soon as possible, and it actually speeds up that growing process from even a seed or a small cutting to a bigger plant that will be able to replant into a bigger pot. But that's the point of the grow light in our greenhouse. We don't use them for any 6-inch pots or larger or anything like that. We're actually using them just for our really small cuttings.
Yeah, so that's another way of using them.
Yeah.
Is we will use them mainly from January or December all the way through until April, maybe even into May, depending on what we're trying to grow. And it's to trick the plant into thinking that it's the spring. In the spring, the plant wants to grow faster. Now this is a very simple way of thinking about it, but in the spring, the plant wants to grow faster. Trick the plant into thinking that it's the spring. That way the plant goes, oh, it's time for me to grow. It's time for me to get a little bit bigger. So that's what you're trying to do.
Yep. And if you're wondering what our greenhouse looks like during that time, it is a pink greenhouse, and we get comments on it all the time. It's a glowing pink greenhouse. Yeah.
If you are near a very big, let's say there are like greenhouse towns, that there are some near us, and you can actually see the glow from far away, from miles away. If it's a really cloudy night in the winter, you can see the glow from that area because there's just so many lights that are on all at the same time. So I mentioned that they are used for different types of crops. Okay, propagation is another one. That's what Maddie picked up on. Propagation is when the plant is really small, you want it to start to begin to grow. That's when you would use some of these lights to trick them. Custom light spectrums. So that would be the greenhouse can say, hey, I really want to try out a little bit more blue in my lights, and instead of having so much red and blue. So greenhouses will go in depth into exactly what kind of a mix they want for the type of crop that they have. Now there's another different type of grow light. Some are using HPS, which is high pressure sodium, and that is a light that looks a little bit more like an incandescent bulb. That's the look that it has. They're a little bit bigger. They're more like old school is what they look like. However, some greenhouses like them a lot because they produce so much heat.
Okay.
So they actually get hot, and when they get hot, you cut down on how much natural gas that you have to burn in order to heat your greenhouse. So there's a little bit of a back and forth. LED is the other one. LED is a bit newer. Now, the reason that not everyone uses LED, they're more energy efficient, but the reason that not everyone uses them is because there isn't enough information out there for every crop, and there aren't enough studies done for every crop to convince everyone to do that, right?
Yeah.
So that's some background into what happens inside the greenhouse.
I'm gonna add a question before we dive into the next thing. So these lights, these grow lights, do they affect humans at all? Like if I was to stand in that group, like it might be a silly question, but to walk through the grow lights, nothing's gonna happen. Like I'm fine, other than the fact that if you do walk into a greenhouse by chance, and these grow lights are on, when you walk out, everything is pink. Everything you're gonna look at looks pink. But does this actually affect humans? Like if someone had this at their home, what if their cat sat under the grow light all the time?
No, as long as you're not staring at it.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if staring at them for a long time, what that does to your eyes. I haven't really looked into that, but generally, like I've only been able to look at it for like a second or two, and then you have to look away because it just becomes so.
I mean, generally, you shouldn't be staring at any lights for too long of a period
Yeah,
of time.
yeah.
So
it's like
that's
looking at the
safe.
sun,
Yeah.
so you can't really
Okay.
help too much there. Okay, so how do you apply this to your own home? Now, step one, it's basically just a crossing off the list. For your garden, for your outdoor annual plants, doesn't really apply. Yeah, getting grow lights for them, it doesn't apply. So that's easy. We can just skip it.
We can even say like spring and summer plants that you have. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Your natural sunlight's going to take care of it. You'll be fine.
And those are plants that are you want to bring in, you're going to put around your home. They're going to hang out there, and then in the fall, depending on if you get a frost or maybe you're sick of them, maybe you have to change seasons, so you're going to move from the summer to the fall, and you want to just swap out your plants. They're plants that you're made to get rid of.
Yeah.
So, no, you're not going to use any grow lights for them.
Yeah.
Now, indoor plants. Look at all the indoor plants on that picture. Wow. If you're listening, there's a lot of indoor plants on a picture.
Yeah.
How are you going to use it for your house plants? First off, small plants. It's reasonable for small. Let's say 2-inch up to 6-inch. That makes sense. 10-inch pots doesn't make sense. Why? Well, if you got big enough lights, that would be fine. But now you're talking about a really big structure in order to put over top of your lights, which I don't think that's very reasonable. What we're looking at is probably just a shelf that you have, and then there's another shelf on top with a few lights attached to it. Or you can I know online you can find grow lights that almost look like, like a book, bookmark, and then it has like that little bit of an arm that comes out.
A reading light for your book, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, or the Eye from Pixar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That kind of an idea where it just, blasts out some light onto one or two plants.
Yeah.
That's reasonable for a smaller plant.
Okay.
If you're doing a 10-inch and you want to do this, you're going to have to get a much larger sized light, which it's doable. I just don't think it's as reasonable.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say, too, like, if you've got a 10-inch plant, I know this sounds a little bit silly that I'm even going to say this, but the grow lights, the point is to help your plant grow. If you've got a 10-inch plant, you probably don't need it to grow that much. I don't think light's necessarily going to be doing that for you as much as, watering it. It's natural sunlight that you can get maybe even during some of the winter days, and fertilizer. Like, just making sure that it's a healthy plant. It's going to grow naturally on its own. You don't need a grow light for a plant that big.
When they get to that size, it sort of becomes during the summer, you want your plant to grow and be happy, and then during the winter, you just want to kind of hold on, really, is stay stationary. You might lose a few leaves here and there, especially with bigger plants in the winter, and it's mainly because you're trying to keep something in a very equator-type plant in the northern hemisphere space, and you just want to hold on as very best you can, get through to the next spring, and then look for more growth from there.
I think I always relate this back to, like, a human and how we'd feel, but we're the same way. Like, we're thriving in the spring and the summer, and when it gets cold outside, we're just hanging on and we're waiting for the spring to come back.
Yeah.
It's really no different than your plants. Like, your plants are just hanging on until they get that sunlight and that heat again. Okay, awesome.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we talked about, you get your shelf, you get your smaller plants. When are you supposed to run them? So there are some people will say that you should run them from as soon as the sun goes down. You should run them for a few hours. Let it be dark overnight, and then run it before the sun comes up in the morning. So let's say you run it from the sun goes down at 6, let's say 6 or 7. You could run the lights, they could turn on at 6 or something, 6, 7, and then they run until 10. Then they're off from 10 till 3 or 4, and then they turn on from 4 until 6 or 7 the next morning, right? So that's one school of thought. Another school of thought is you actually run it in that middle period. So the sun sets at 6 or 7, and then it's darkness for that plant until 10. Then you run the lights from 10 p.m. until 3 a.m., and then you have darkness again until the next day. So I've heard both methods being used. I don't think that one or the other is exactly the right one to use. I've heard that the reason that it's used like this is because different greenhouses are taking advantage of the lower electricity costs during the different times of day.
Okay.
If you have them running, if you had a really, really, really big greenhouse, imagine you've got a ton of these different lights and you're running them all at that peak hour, like from 5 to 8 o'clock, when electricity is a little bit more expensive on the grid. Everyone's running their dryers and their washing machines and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you turn these on. It's going to be like marginally more expensive.
Okay.
So you can run them in the middle of the night instead when things are much cheaper.
Okay, and I'm thinking for someone at home, you're probably not going to want to wake up at 10 p.m. Or I say wake up because I go to bed so early. But however, you're not going to want to put them on at 10 a.m. and then wake up at 3 in the morning to turn them off. So, like, this could be a situation where, okay, sun goes down, turn them off before you go to bed. Or sorry, turn them on, and then before you go to bed, you can turn them off again. When you wake up in the morning, turn them on, leave them on for a couple hours, and then just turn them off again. That could be your easiest, like, go-to method that you don't have to, like, wake up early in the morning or set them to a timer, obviously.
Ideally, they come with a timer.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure a lot of them will come with a timer, and if they don't, you can probably go out and buy a timer. I would suggest that because without using a timer, it'll be, as you mentioned, it'd just be a little bit of a headache.
Yeah.
So try to give them about 16 hours of light in a day. Let's say in the winter, 12 to 16 hours, somewhere in there is great for your plant, especially if you're trying to get them to grow. What light spectrum should you use? This is, you can't be very specific on it. Now I have this noted in here because greenhouses will be very specific on what light spectrum they want, but with this, I don't think that you can get that granular because you're buying a consumer product. You can't message the manufacturer and say, hey, I want exactly this range. Plus, you're probably using it for a many different types of plants. So you've got to get something that's very general.
So I'm gonna ask a question: how big can we expect our plants to grow from grow lights? Like, do they really speed up the time that much? Let's say we just mentioned that a light spectrum is going to be, you're going to get a light for a greenhouse that's going to be much more expensive, more technical, more detailed. But if you're going to get one for home, it's not going to be the same, right? It's still going to do its job. But how fast can you expect your plant to grow from a light like this?
I don't think it makes it. I'm not thinking about using grow lights to make them grow a lot faster.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's to make them happier in the winter.
Okay.
Specifically, that's the way that I'm thinking about this because during the summer, you might not really need to use this. It's during the winter is when your houseplants might start to hurt the most. Or they start to get leggy and they start to stretch. Or that's when they start to not look as great.
Okay.
You can use grow lights as a way to keep them happy until you get to the next spring and then turn them off and let them go ahead with the regular
Okay. Amazing.
seasons again.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly which product? Now, we don't have anything specific to recommend.
Yes. Checking out. Maybe you go online and you see some different, you've been researching some different ones and you like one and you're not totally sure if you like it or not, or if we should get it. Send us a question, send us the brand. We'd be happy to dive into it from our perspective, or I say our, but really it's his perspective, and see if that's a brand or a product that would be beneficial for you to get. We'll make sure you get your bang for your buck as well. But also, send us your brands. And if you're really stuck and you don't want to do that, or you don't even know where to start, go to your local garden center. That could be like a Metro Garden Center. That could be a whole garden center on its own. And ask them. They might have some insight on that. Something that you could do as well as some, in case you're looking for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads us right into the end of the show. If you have any questions, head over to plantcare.club. If you have any brands you want us to take a look at, send us a link at plantcare.club in the question form and we can take a look at it. We got lots of other information on there, lots of other shows. Check us out on YouTube, other podcast players if you're listening to it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to see all the pictures that we have up too, check us out on YouTube, and we've got a few pictures behind us as well.
Yep, and make sure to give us a follow on Instagram if you guys are interested in more, because we've got lots of information on there.
Once again, there's the marketing person. That wouldn't be me. Thank you very much for listening. We'll talk to you guys again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.